The man who once ruled television with a single glance now faced a challenge no spotlight could illuminate. Simon Cowell, known for his sharp words, unshakable confidence, and ironclad control, was suddenly confronting a world that fame, fortune, and power could not protect him from. What happens when the toughest critic meets a reality even he cannot control? And how does a father navigate a truth that changes everything he thought he knew about life, love, and family? Behind closed doors, nights were filled with silent fears, relentless worry, and moments that tested every ounce of his strength. This is the emotional journey that reshaped Simon Cowell, the story the cameras never captured. Love, growth, and emotional goodbye to his old life. Over the years, Simon Cowell's life transformed in ways even he hadn't imagined. The man who once thrived on control, fast decisions, and a world of predictable routines learned quickly that fatherhood had no script. Eric's presence reshaped priorities, redefined patience, and demanded a kind of love that couldn't be measured in fame, fortune, or career achievements. Every day presented new challenges, but it also offered new opportunities for Simon to connect, understand, and grow alongside his son. The tiny victories, a first word, a smile, or even a moment of calm became treasures more valuable than any award he had ever received. Simon's world, once filled with flashy lights, contracts, and deadlines, had narrowed and focused in ways he never expected. It was no longer about the speed of decisions or the size of the audience. It was about presence, attention, and understanding. Saying goodbye to his old life wasn't easy. The spontaneous trips he used to enjoy, the late-night meetings that once defined him, and the effortless social appearances that kept him in the spotlight gave way to carefully planned schedules, early bedtimes, and a home environment designed entirely around Eric's comfort and well-being. Every outing, every plan, required forethought and consideration, from noise levels to lighting, to the small details most people would never notice. Simon had to release the version of himself that existed solely for public applause and external validation, embracing a quieter, more attentive identity that demanded patience, empathy, and sacrifice. Each choice he made was about Eric, his happiness, his safety, his learning, and his growth, and nothing else could take priority. The man who had once thrived on certainty now learned to navigate unpredictability with calm determination, discovering that love often requires letting go of control. Yet within these challenges came profound joy. Simon discovered a depth of emotion he had never known before. A smile from Eric, a shared laugh during playtime, or a small victory in learning something new became monumental celebrations. Every step of Eric's growth was a reminder of the power of patience, persistence, and unconditional love. Simon's life had shifted from managing schedules and headlines to nurturing moments that would stay in his heart forever. Even simple activities like reading a story, building a block tower, or watching Eric discover something for the first time became moments of wonder and pride. Fatherhood had reshaped Simon in a way no amount of fame or money ever could. It wasn't just parenting, it was a journey of humility, learning, and deep emotional growth. The goodbye to his old life wasn't a loss. It was a necessary step to embrace the joy, responsibility, and love that came with being Eric's father. Each day, Simon learned to celebrate the little things, cherish the quiet victories, and find strength in moments that were never meant to be public, but were priceless nonetheless. Public life and scrutiny. Simon under the spotlight. Even as Simon poured his heart into fatherhood, the public eye never stopped watching. Every appearance, every smile, every small gesture with Eric was noticed, analyzed, and often misunderstood. Social media made everything bigger than it was. A simple stroll in the park could become a headline. A casual photo could spark debates, guesses, and endless discussions online. Simon quickly realized that the world was watching not just his career, but also his private life, every decision, and every interaction with his son. The pressure wasn't just about staying famous, it was about protecting Eric, his comfort, his privacy, and his sense of security in a world that often didn't understand. The scrutiny wasn't always kind. Headlines speculated wildly. Fans and strangers debated every detail of Eric's behavior. Online forums and comment sections dissected moments that, in reality, were ordinary father and son interactions. Some comments were innocent curiosity, but others were cruel or judgmental. The man who once faced the toughest critiques in the music industry now faced something much more personal. Simon understood quickly that reacting publicly could only make things worse. Instead, he learned to shield his family, to filter the noise, and to focus entirely on what mattered most: Eric's happiness and well-being. While the cameras captured glamorous events, premieres, or charity functions, Simon's real work happened quietly, holding Eric's hand during walks, teaching him new things at home, and celebrating each small victory behind closed doors. These moments weren't meant for headlines, yet they were far more important than any public accolade. Even at high-profile events like America's Got Talent, charity galas, or award ceremonies, Simon remained quietly protective. While the audience saw him composed and confident, he was always aware of Eric's needs, his reactions, and his comfort. Loud noises, flashing lights, and crowded spaces could overwhelm Eric. Simon had to anticipate every possible challenge before they stepped into public spaces. A simple smile for the cameras often hid deep concern. ATED, mental checklist, running constantly in his mind. Is Eric okay? Is he feeling safe? Does he need a break? Every action, every step required vigilance and careful planning. The life of a celebrity father wasn't about attention or applause anymore. It was about careful observation, readiness, and prioritizing a child's well-being above all else. This constant balance between fame and fatherhood reshaped Simon's life. The approval of millions of fans, once vital to his identity, became secondary to the trust and happiness of his son. Luxury, freedom, and spontaneity gave way to schedules, planning, and intentional moments. Even when the world expected him to be a public figure first, Simon chose to be a father first. Each event, each photo opportunity, each public appearance became part of a larger strategy to protect and nurture Eric, teaching Simon the true meaning of patience, love, and sacrifice. Through this process, Simon transformed quietly but profoundly. The sharp, judgmental public persona softened. He became more empathetic, more attentive, and more mindful. The world saw the polished celebrity, but behind the scenes, he was learning daily what it truly meant to love unconditionally and protect fiercely. And in embracing this new identity, Simon demonstrated that real courage isn't measured in contracts or TV ratings. It's measured in the countless, unseen moments spent ensuring a child feels safe, understood, and loved. Early fatherhood. Eric's arrival and Simon's transformation. The first time Simon Cowell held his son Eric, something inside him shifted, quietly but completely. There were no cameras, no applause, no cheering fans, just the soft weight of a tiny human in his hands. And yet, it was one of the most profound moments of his life. The man who had built a global entertainment empire on confidence, sharp judgments, and precise control felt a vulnerability he had never known. Every contract negotiated, every talent show judged with surgical precision. every word crafted for maximum impact, suddenly felt distant compared to the small, delicate life he now held. In that moment, Simon realized that fatherhood had a power unlike anything else. It could soften the edges of someone accustomed to dominating every room, every conversation, every decision. Before Eric arrived, Simon's world moved at a relentless pace. Every day was measured in contracts, meetings, talent shows, and global appearances. Decisions were calculated, meetings were timed to the minute, and his reputation depended on precision. The man who could size up a performer in seconds and make or break careers now faced a challenge that no experience had prepared him for: the unpredictable rhythm of a newborn's life. Diaper changes, late-night cries, lullabies, and endless questions replaced press conferences, red carpets, and the familiar hum of television studios. The world Simon knew was rigid and structured, but fatherhood introduced a new kind of unpredictability, one he had to learn to embrace. Even in those early days, Simon began to notice the subtle signs of Eric's personality. A tiny laugh that came out of nowhere, a delicate grip of his little fingers on Simon's hand, the way his eyes lingered on simple objects in the room. Each small moment became monumental. Victories weren't measured in contracts signed or television ratings, but in these quiet, fleeting glimpses of connection. Simon cherished everyone, replaying them in his mind long after Eric had drifted off to sleep. The thrill of holding his child, of seeing him respond, smile, or explore, was unmatched by any accolade or headline. The transformation wasn't instant, nor was it easy. Patience, a virtue that Simon had tested in negotiations and auditions, now had to stretch further than ever before. Nights were long, filled with uncertainty, worry, and the constant learning curve of caring for a newborn. Each day brought new lessons: how to calm Eric when he was distressed, how to anticipate his needs, and how to be present in a way that fame had never required. Simon had to let go of some of his old ways, abandoning rigid schedules and high-pressure routines in favor of gentleness, attentiveness, and intuition. The shift was gradual but undeniable. The man who once wielded power through authority now learned to wield it through love, patience, and protection. Adjusting to life as a hands-on father also brought unexpected discoveries about Simon himself. He found joy in routines he had once considered mundane: the quiet moments of reading a story, the gentle sway during lullabies, or simply watching Eric's fascination with a spinning toy. He began to understand that success could no longer be measured in fame, money, or influence alone. Real triumph was in these small victories, the fleeting moments of connection that built trust, confidence, and love between father and son. Simon's perspective on life, work, and even relationships shifted as he realized that some of the most important achievements were invisible to the public eye. But the journey was only beginning. Balancing fatherhood with the pressures of a public life tested Simon in ways no stage or studio ever had. Each day became a lesson in humility, patience, and emotional awareness. Every night at home brought new challenges, and every day offered new opportunities for discovery. Questions loomed constantly. How could he balance his career ambitions with Eric's needs? How could he ensure that Eric felt safe, understood, and loved despite the glare of fame? And, perhaps most importantly, how would Eric shape the man Simon had always been? Someone confident, sharp, and in control, into a father capable of unconditional love, quiet courage, and deep emotional presence? Through it all, Simon began to understand that fatherhood was transformative in the truest sense. It reshaped not only his daily life, but also his heart, his priorities, and the way he approached the world. Every smile, every milestone, and every discovery by Eric became a mirror reflecting a new side of Simon himself, a side softened by love, humbled by responsibility, and strengthened by the quiet joys and challenges of raising a child. The man who once ruled stages and television sets was now learning to navigate the delicate, unpredictable, and deeply rewarding world of fatherhood. One day, one small victory, and one profound moment at a time. Challenges and adjustments. Life after becoming a dad. Fatherhood was a world Simon Cowell hadn't expected, a life unlike anything he had ever encountered. The sleepless nights became routine, each hour feeling longer than the last. The constant feedings and endless diaper changes tested him in ways no talent show, no red carpet event, and no high-stakes contract ever could. The empire he had meticulously built around control, precision, and public image suddenly felt distant, replaced by the unpredictable rhythm of a newborn's life. Every cry, every tiny movement, every glance demanded his full attention. There were moments when he felt completely unprepared, questioning his own instincts and abilities, wondering if he was doing enough or if he was failing in ways only a parent could truly understand. At first, Simon tried to approach fatherhood the same way he had approached every challenge in his career, with research, preparation, and strict schedules. He devoured parenting books, watched videos, and even sought advice from friends who had children of their own. Yet, despite all the knowledge he gathered, nothing could have prepared him for the emotional depth of caring for another human life. This wasn't just about making decisions or executing plans. It was about love, patience, empathy, and a sense of responsibility that went far beyond professional success. Late at night, when the world was asleep, Simon would sit quietly, holding Eric in his arms. In those moments, he felt emotions he had rarely allowed himself to explore publicly. A mix of love so deep it hurt, fear for the unknown, pride in every little accomplishment, and the heavy responsibility of shaping a life that depended entirely on him. These feelings collided, overwhelming him at times, yet inspiring him in ways no award or accolade ever could. Adjusting to this new life meant completely rethinking his routines and priorities. Work meetings were postponed, trips rescheduled, and glamorous events reconsidered. Even the simplest outings required careful planning to ensure Eric's comfort. Simon had to accept that some things were now beyond his control, that spontaneity would take a back seat, and that patience wasn't just a virtue, it was a necessity. Every small milestone became a monumental moment. Eric's first steps, the first time he said "Dada," a tiny smile after a long day, or the way he laughed at something simple all became victories that Simon celebrated quietly but profoundly. These weren't just parenting achievements. They were reminders that growth often comes in the smallest, most unexpected moments. The transformation wasn't just about Eric. It was about Simon himself. The man who once thrived on critique, judgment, and fast decision-making now discovered joy in slowing down, listening, and connecting. Every challenge tested his resilience, his empathy, and his capacity to love unconditionally. The sleepless nights, the constant learning, the uncertainty, they all became lessons in humility, shaping him into a father who understood that perfection didn't exist, but dedication did. Each day brought a new obstacle, balancing work commitments with parenting duties, navigating public attention while protecting his son's privacy, and adjusting to the relentless unpredictability that came with raising a child. Through it all, Simon began to see fatherhood as a journey rather than a task. He learned that mistakes were part of the process and that love required flexibility, patience, and understanding. The challenges pushed him to grow, not as a public figure, but as a parent, willing to embrace the messy, beautiful chaos of life with his son. The highs felt higher, the small victories sweeter, and the emotional connection richer than anything he had ever experienced. Simon's transformation became evident, not in headlines or ratings, but in the quiet moments with Eric, the bedtime stories, the shared laughter, the gentle guidance through life's small lessons. In learning to adjust, Simon realized that the most meaningful accomplishments weren't measured by fame or fortune, but by the bond he was building with the most important person in his world, his son. Balancing fame and family, private struggles. Behind the cameras, even as Simon Cowell embraced fatherhood, the world outside didn't pause. Cameras flashed, headlines wrote themselves, and every move he made was scrutinized by millions. Public appearances, interviews, and red carpet events continued without interruption, creating a constant pressure to maintain the confident, unshakable persona the world had come to expect. But at home, in the quiet corners away from the spotlight, a very different life was unfolding, one filled with tender moments, personal challenges, and lessons that fame could never teach. Simon had to navigate two very different worlds: the high-profile, public stage, and the intimate, private role of being a father to Eric. The contrast was stark, and the balance he sought required constant adjustment and awareness. The challenges were never just about managing time, they were deeply emotional. Simon often arrived at work exhausted from sleepless nights and long hours of parenting, yet he was still expected to be sharp, decisive, and confident in front of the cameras. Behind the curtains, however, he wrestled with concerns only a parent could feel. Was Eric happy? Was he safe? Was he understood? Did he feel the love and attention he deserved? Every small decision, from choosing the right toys to structuring Eric's day to ensuring routines were predictable and comforting, carried a weight far beyond what anyone could see on television. Simple mistakes or oversights were not just minor inconveniences. They felt like missteps with lasting consequences for his child's well-being. Protecting Eric's privacy became an unspoken mission. Simon had learned the hard way that fame could be invasive and unrelenting. Every outing, even those as ordinary as a trip to the park or a casual stroll in the neighborhood, had to be carefully planned to avoid cameras, paparazzi, and crowds. He knew that public scrutiny could be cruel, and he wanted to shield his son from judgment, speculation, and undue attention. It wasn't about secrecy. It was about creating a safe space where Eric could grow, explore, and learn without fear of being misunderstood or unfairly analyzed by the outside world. Even the smallest actions, like lining up a few minutes of playtime or choosing a quieter path through the park, were intentional steps to protect his son's comfort and emotional well-being. Through it all, Simon's resilience grew stronger. The sharp, unyielding persona the public had come to know softened over time, replaced by patience, attentiveness, and quiet determination. The fame that had once defined him, dictating his schedule and shaping his public image, gradually took a back seat. Fatherhood, with all its complexities, unpredictability, and profound responsibility, began to shape his decisions and define his priorities. Simon discovered that being present for Eric, listening, observing, guiding, and celebrating small victories was far more meaningful than any applause or accolade he had ever received in the public eye. In this delicate balance, Simon learned lessons that no television show, contract negotiation, or talent discovery could teach. The world might have seen a composed, confident celebrity, but behind closed doors, a man was learning to navigate the unpredictable, messy, and beautiful reality of raising a child. He found joy in small victories, Eric's laughter, the first words carefully spoken, or a successful day spent without distress. These moments, invisible to the world, became the real measures of success. And though the cameras and headlines never paused, Simon realized that the quiet, private triumphs of fatherhood outweighed any public recognition, applause, or praise. In protecting his son and embracing this new role, Simon discovered a deeper meaning of love, patience, and purpose, one that no stage, studio, or red carpet could ever replicate. Simon Cowell's journey as a father shows us a side of him the world rarely sees: a man navigating fear, love, and responsibility with grace and determination. The headlines and cameras can capture moments, but they cannot tell the full story of the nights spent comforting a child, the quiet victories celebrated in private, or the courage it takes to redefine a life for someone else. Eric's presence has reshaped Simon's world, proving that true achievement isn't measured in fame, contracts, or awards. It's in patience, care, and the deep bond between parent and child. And while Simon has said goodbye to parts of his old life, what he has gained is priceless. A chance to witness growth, resilience, and joy in its purest form. If this story touched you, that reveals the hearts behind the headlines. Share your thoughts on how someone in your life transformed your world in unexpected ways. Inspire others with Simon Cowell's journey of love, courage, and emotional growth. Stay tuned for more stories that remind us what truly matters in life.